Let's move to Summer League.
Let's talk about it.
I'm wearing my Nug Life shirt made by Alec Gwynn. Shout out to you because DaRon Holmes tore his Achilles tendon in the first Summer League game against the Clippers in the fourth quarter, and it was pretty heartbreaking to say the least. And I think the first point we should talk about with it is just that it just sucks for him.
Yeah.
Like I know fans are quick to be like, "Well, how does this affect the team?" I know like everyone probably feels bad for him. I'm not calling anyone out, but it's just worth stating again that
Yeah.
it's just like terrible for a player who has so much promise. And he was kind of considered a steal. Like he's a good fit for the Nuggets, but there are people who are really excited about him as a player. And it's not going to derail his career. It's still going to be good. I hope. I mean, the Achilles is a people would say it's like it's one of the worst injuries and tough to come back from because it can like limit your burst and all that. But he's still so young.
He's so young. He's
So
21, I think, right?
yeah. So I think it'll be okay. And like even Kevin Durant, you can argue about how he's looked since the Achilles, but it's not like he's unplayable. He's still an elite player.
Yeah, Kevin Durant
Um,
is not unplayable.
yeah, he
Understatement.
doesn't have to go out of the league because of this injury. And I think there are people talking about like the advancements with that and like physical therapy and rehab. So I'm not like worried about him.
It really
Yeah,
sucks. I
yeah,
mean, he's making his NBA debut in Summer League. He doesn't even get through a full game. He does get hurt in the fourth quarter, like you say. And, you know, like watching this unfold live because you didn't get to watch the game
yeah.
live, right? Watching everyone's like reactions online, we got to see like no one knew exactly what was going on because at first they were like Achilles tightness, and then they were like looking at it and all of that. But some of the first, like hints at yeah, it's a
It's
serious
bad.
thing. It's probably a torn Achilles. We got actually came from his dad on Twitter, who was just like
Whoa.
FML at one point, and then today he actually wrote a really nice message that was just thanking everybody that since then had written well wishes and everything and how they're moving on to the next step, which is like the road to rehabilitation and trying to come back, which is really positive, but it's really tough for just to think about just those moments for him and for his family, just processing that in real time while your NBA debut game is still going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just brutal.
And, let's talk about some of what we did see from his game,
Yeah.
right?
Ugh. His 3-point shot was so beautiful,
It was pure. Well, I don't know if the shot itself was beautiful,
but
but
the
like it kept
production
going
was
in.
beautiful.
Like, so his shot form has been compared to Al Horford's
Yeah,
wide base. It was pretty consistent, which is good, especially for a big man that you don't necessarily expect to be like a high volume shooter. You want their form to be consistent so that whenever they do get those looks, they're able to at least take them. And he was knocking him down. A lot of just punishing overhelp and that kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know the full, road to rehab from an Achilles tear, but at some point he's going to be able to work more on skill things even before he's allowed to start any kind of like contact based play or
hmm,
anything like that. Lots of guys have, dealt with both this injury and other injuries that take them out for large stretches and then they come back with just a different perspective on the game. We saw this just last year with Chet Holmgren, who missed his entire would be his rookie season with the Liz Frank thing with his foot. So I'm not very different like
yeah,
recovery and rehab process, but the point is just like being around the team, getting to take everything in
right.
that is the NBA slowly may end up being a blessing in a really ugly disguise.
Yeah, that's the silver lining is that he can learn from Jokic probably. Like he'll be sitting on the bench, people will be
Hey,
pointing out like, "Hey, notice how this guy does this," or
yeah.
he'll see like the deficiencies of the bench too, and
How can
hopefully,
I
yeah,
help when
and
I'm able to
yeah, and
physically?
envision like holes that he could fill, stuff like that. That's exciting, but I just like am so impatient to watch him play because I was so
Yeah,
excited
yeah,
that it's just such a drag. And I know it's maybe marginal because we didn't even know how much of a contributor he was going to be,
yeah.
but the potential was so high that I was super excited. So you just hope that he learns a lot and comes back strong, and having like the knowledge under his belt gives him more success to like put it into practice next season. So
Right.
but yeah, his three looked good. He looked really quick too. Like he
Yeah, he
looked
did. I liked
fast.
I liked the way he looked on defense. I think he was maybe the only positive defender in the Summer League starting lineup. We'll talk about everyone else a little bit later, but he was really active in the passing lanes, really active on the ball. He got a steal and then like a deflection steal, and then like Julian got him this really cool dunk in transition, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You were just like, man, that's it's like bigger Peyton. Imagine the two of them on the floor at the same time, like the kind of havoc that they could wreak. And, we'll have to wait to see it. But, at this point, I'm just like wishing him just full recovery. I hope and I expect the team to just embrace him in like all of the ways, like literally and everything else, right? And it's I'm glad that he's got like security right now. Just to answer like for the people that have specific questions about how this affects like the salary side of the team. So technically the team is allowed to apply for a disabled player exception that would give them something like $1.5 million to spend another player, which is less than the vet minimum. So it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't give us an extra roster spot. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really impact anything about what we could do with the roster. This is something that the team also experienced last season when we had Vlatko out with the ACL tear.
Yeah.
So that's just, how things are. Just wanted to clear that up for anybody that had that specific question. But I just like wish him just a full recovery, and I hope that, this isn't too big of an emotional blow, especially like with his family around him and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, he'll have time to like get through all the emotions of that, and he'll have Jamal there, who went through a really tough ACL. He'll have Vlatko. So that's part of the frustration.
Dario.
Oh yeah, and Dario.
A lot of guys. We have Mike with his back issues too.
There needs to be like a meme of the Nuggets where they're like all bandaged up,
yes.
like
yeah.
Not to like. I mean, I guess it's good to like kind of make fun of it because.
I mean, that's all you can do when it comes to Nug life, right?
Nug life. In totality, though, it's like all the injuries piled up. Like people were adding it up and saying, like, "Damn, like a season-ending injury in every season in the last 3 seasons or whatever it was." And yeah, it's true. But we did win a championship with good.
And not everybody does that.
Yeah, not everybody does that. So, but yeah, it just goes back to the same thing we've been talking about, where it's like we're trying to maximize Jokic, and you don't want these injuries to derail everything that he could accomplish. Right. But let's talk about some of the specifics of like him and this injury and what that means for other players and the team overall, because this opens up things for Vlatko, obviously. Last episode, we had talked about how we had so many players in the front court that we were unsure even of what the pecking order is going to be. Now he goes out, and we need more bodies now all of a sudden, which is kind of ironic.
That's really funny. I do think that like when I brought that up last episode, I maybe discounted the subgroups within our front court depth. Mm-hmm. And DaRon was definitely in the subgroup that was like, he adds athleticism to that front court.
Yeah.
And I guess like a fully healthy Vlatko could be part of that part of the Venn diagram. And then Zeke Naji also, right? Whereas you have like skill when it comes to, Vlatko's there too, Dario and Hunter Tyson. But in terms of that athleticism, especially as a complement to those skill guys, I think it will be missed. It doesn't really change what the front court looks like, at least compared to last year. Like, I still think, like, on the whole, because we got Dario, our front court looks better than it did last year. It would have been, in my opinion, even better if we'd had DaRon there. But just to, complement that, especially defensively. But, next man up.
I really, there's no guarantee he was going to play in the playoffs, which I think is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
That's like the best case scenario is he's good enough to play in the playoffs. We can use him in maybe some double big lineups that we're struggling with. He's just another option there. And now there's less options. And I was excited to see him operate offense with the bench. But Dario still brings that.
Yeah.
And I think they would play a similar style. Like, let's say they weren't playing together and he comes in. I think he would try to play a similar-ish style that's spacing the floor and passing, maybe in different ways and from different spots on the floor. But
I think that he'd probably, especially the first year, not have as much on-ball responsibility.
Right. But like I could see
Especially with the
him.
shot looking as good as it does. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we could use you as a spacer and a
Hmm.
screen and dive man and have Dario spacing, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
less so like using DaRon as a hub for large stretches of the season.
Right.
But it would have been a nice option to have for sure. And it is a loss, but I don't think that this like hobbles the team
Right.
substantially or anything like
Because
that.
let's be honest, like rookies often kind of like they can surprise you and have a
Yeah.
bunch in
But you
there.
shouldn't rely on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time, rookies, even who are contributing in a specific way
Yeah.
or like a specific skill. And
Right.
so, like, the idea that Duran would be, offering playmaking and shooting and defense and like all these things
Yeah.
in the first year that we're all excited about and know that he has potential to do those things, that might have not been the reality of the season were he healthy. So it's hard to evaluate, and I don't know if this makes it easier to evaluate the bench because it's like you'll see a clear weakness and the weakness will be
Sure.
like, oh, you need a
But it's
Duran
the
or
same, like, we've been able to, I don't think we're worried about being able to evaluate the bench. Like, we know what's wrong with the bench. We need to, like,
there's no
fix it, and
Jokic.
we're not going to be able to fix it. Yeah, exactly. The problem with the non Jokic minutes is that there's no Jokic.
Yes, there needs to be two of him, as he joked.
Anyway, we are definitely wishing Duran just, like, the
Yeah,
best, and we wish his
as-
family the best as well. This is going to be a really tough time for everybody around him, and I just hope they get as much support as they possibly can.
yeah, I think they will. I mean, that sadly the Nuggets are used to this situation. So, but let's talk about someone who we do have hopes for still, and isn't a rookie. It's his second season. Julian Strawther had a interesting game. There's different ways you could look at it. He was 3 of 10 from three, 7 of 19 from overall, I believe, and 25 points. 8 of 10 from the free throw line, and
Hey, over a point per shot, man.
yeah, like I watched, so like I didn't watch the game live, like you said, and I watched like the highlights, and of course they put in all the best plays, and so I'm seeing Julian like these amazing plays back to back, and I'm like, whoa, he does look pretty good. But then you look at the stats, definitely missed some shots. It wasn't like it was like a really amazing game. You had said on DNVR that you wanted him to look like he didn't belong there because he was so good, like he was NBA caliber player, no questions asked. Do you think he met that bar, or how would you evaluate the game that he had?
So, I mean, I already thought that Julian looked like an NBA caliber player, but I wanted him to look so good in Summer League that you don't want him playing more than 2 games.
Yeah,
I
get him out of
don't
there.
think that he quite passed that threshold, but I do think he looked pretty good. In terms of the struggles, they had him in a different role than he would probably be most of the time with the team because they were explicitly trying to work to expand his game. And that meant he was doing lots of dribbling. And whenever he was facing somebody up that was like even mildly pesky on the ball, he was turning it over, which was not fun. He had 3 turnovers, which wasn't terrible, but it was a 1 to 3 assist to turnover ratio. We'll talk about that too. He did try a couple of pretty like wild passes, in my opinion, and I think it's mostly like, okay, there was a little bit too much on the ball because he's not a passer, so he doesn't know quite how much force to put on the ball to get it exactly the distance that it wants to get. But he had the right ideas. He's trying to work on his playmaking. He's trying to work on his defense. It's something that they talked about in the Summer League mini camp last week. He talked about him being 3 of 10 from three. It's funny because I felt like he missed the easy ones and then made the hard ones.
Yeah, like the
Because
cross-up dribble ISOs that he's just jacking up. He makes
exactly. And like the catch and shoot still looked a little rushed. It was interesting to hear him talk about how the team struggled as a whole. The Nuggets did not win that Summer League game against the Clippers.
But they were like right in it, kind of up
Yeah,
until
no,
the end.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But the point is that they're talking about in the post game, they're talking about the loss and like evaluate the team. How'd you guys do and all that? And he said that they still looked rushed on offense, and that was something that they talked about in particular during summer league training camp, effectively last week. And it was interesting to see him, Hunter, and Jalen Pickett all have that same problem, even though they were second-year players. And it was a problem that had clearly persisted through training camp because they talked about it then. And it was another one that Julian talked about, I think, at halftime of this game because they went down at half. And they had like a little like mini media session with him there and in the post game. So that's something that I'd like to investigate a little bit further at some point, if that just kind of keeps persisting. Because what you want to see from second-year players is, at the very least, the game has slowed down for them. Everyone talks
Right.
about that, right? You don't want him to look like rushed. I do think that there were a lot of great things, like you said. The pull-up ISO threes from Julian were just money.
Yeah.
At one point, it was like there was a stretch where the offense just looked really rough in terms of process, and a Julian Strawther pull-up ISO 3 was like the best offense that they could get, actually. So that was encouraging, because I was wondering about his ability as a pull-up threat, because I think being a threat to rise up and shoot over somebody makes it easier for you to bend the defense if you're deciding to operate in pick and roll, which is something that the team would like him to be able to do to some degree next year. Malone talked about that last week.
Yeah.
You talked about him getting downhill a lot, right?
Yeah. He I don't know what he was, 4 of 9
4
from
of 9 from
inside.
2, yeah.
Yeah, in the inside
some
the
floaters, some layups, some
of
tough,
them,
like rough looking misses.
Yeah, like
but
he drew some contact, got a lot of fouls. Some of them he didn't get calls on, and they were rebounded and like put back up, which is cool. Like,
yes,
just like him getting it,
just being aggressive and like
yeah,
attacking the defense.
I thought he looked pretty like physical, like
Yes.
even just like on the perimeter driving, like bumping into a guy and like using his shoulder. He looked like pretty like strong, and he's like a bigger guy. Like
he's
it's not
sick.
like
He's like
yeah.
he looks like a legit 6'7" to me.
Yeah, so I liked seeing how physical he was, which makes sense because like you're practicing in the NBA. I know he had injuries, but he's got real reps. He's practicing with real dudes, and it's like that level of comfortability is good. But like I do agree that he looks like not fully slowed down, and like
Right.
and that is going to take time if
Right.
he's like trying some different stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like the number one option on this team for offense.
Right, on this summer league team.
Which is
at
kinda
one
funny.
point, because of his pull-up ISO game, the Clippers were like blitzing him. And one of the things I would like him to do better is find his teammates. He did say that he wanted to work on his playmaking. But, you know, some of these turnovers were happening, and I think he would hold on to the ball a little bit too long. He's not somebody that I necessarily need to be able to deliver like the kill pass that like
Yeah.
immediately punishes the defense. Sometimes you need to just give the ball up and let that person make the play. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something that he can work on. But all in all, I was impressed with the versatility of how he scored. And like you said, the physicality, the aggression. That's something we saw from him. We've talked about how he's a lot better at drawing fouls than we thought. And it's just from him just being really aggressive. And he catches defenders off guard. And he is this bigger player coming from the perimeter that is known as a shooter. So he really, just usually catches the defense off guard and is really aggressive going downhill. He has this little hezzy like that he likes to go to, and the rhythm of it is a little bit weird, where like the hesitation is like a real hesitation. So the defender almost like is like, okay, I got him, like he's about to give up the ball, and then Julian like charges forward. I'd like his finishing at the rim to get a little bit better for sure. But my comp of this sort of like reckless summer league game from Julian is actually 2022 Jordan Poole. Is that a fair comp?
I think it's pretty fair. Like, we're not taking it like super literally, but it's fair.
I mean, Jordan Poole's a better ball handler, for example.
Yeah.
And I think he's a better playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't shown that when he's at the Wizards. But again, this is 2022 Jordan Poole.
But it's like, it's there's different like little nuances with the comparison where it's like he could be focal point of an offense like through a whole game, and that's for better or worse, obviously, because the swings are pretty high and low.
Exactly.
But like the 3-point potential explosions there, but sometimes it's not always there, and maybe not the best decision making all the time or simple reads. But you know, Jordan Poole's played with Hall of Famers, and Steve Kerr is a pretty good coach. Mike Malone's a good coach too. There's Hall of Famers on the Nuggets, so he's just younger. He's going to need time to develop those skills and become confident. I would love him to have the confidence of Jordan Poole.
Yeah, I would like that too. And he'll have a smaller role, and I feel like perhaps Julian is less volatile in terms of like knowing his place. Not on a possession by possession basis, but I don't think that Julian's ever going to like be like, I don't think I'm getting enough reps, or
Yeah.
not that that was necessarily Jordan Poole's problem, but Jordan Poole was given so much responsibility so early on. He was basically like Steph when Steph was off the floor, and also like had to be that secondary guy when Steph was on the floor. Whereas Julian is like, you're our sixth man. Like that's what you do. You play off of Jokic. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And ideally, we can kind of like keep him in that like mindset, and that would kind of assuage some of the secondary problems that would come from having a Jordan Poole on your team.
He's definitely less destructive than Jordan Poole.
Well, I don't know about that. Like he was
Well,
really aggressive in this game. Like I thought he was going to hurt someone else or himself the way he was like
oh
launching
man.
to the rim.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
He hasn't had enough like NBA games to really show what side he's going to swing on. But I was looking kind of for like glimpses of what we want from him.
Yeah.
It wasn't maybe there the entire game, and he was playing kind of a different role than maybe he'll be playing in the
Right.
regular season.
Absolutely. He's not going to be like the dude on the floor.
What if
Even
like
in our like atrocious bench unit, I think
Yeah.
our bench unit is better than our summer league
even
team.
with Saric, he's an option probably above Julian on offense on the bench.
Yeah.
Potentially. Just
Well,
because
Sarge
of
is
his
going to have
veteran.
guaranteed minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know if Julian
I guess
will.
that's true. In my mind, I'm clocking that he will have
Yeah,
guaranteed
he
minutes,
probably will.
but who knows? But I thought like the glimpses that he did show is promising, because if he just flashes that even on the bench every once in a while and just slowly builds it up and stays healthy, I have a pretty positive projection of him. But we'll see how the rest of the summer league is. I
Yeah.
hope each game looks better. The defense, though, maybe wasn't the best.
Yeah, the on-ball defense needs some work. I'm still like not. He's like gonna be. He and Sarge are gonna be the worst defenders in our second year.
Yeah, I was
So
thinking.
I'm just not as worried about it. I think the on-ball defense is like okay enough.
Yeah,
And he has to still keep working on it, but I'm never gonna want him as like our primary point of attack defender, for example.
yeah.
But if he's taking on like second options, whatever. Even in this game, like the other team definitely had other targets on the floor.
Should we
Should
say
we
his
target on
name or not?
defense?
Yeah, well, just quickly on Julian's defense before we go to other
Yeah.
people. Like he can be a playmaker, like we
Yes.
saw in the season. So
Yes.
like because he's like long and
Yeah.
athletic enough that he
And
can
when
do
he's got a
stuff.
smaller offensive role, he can remain even more engaged on
Yeah,
defense,
which is-
playing passing lanes. Did they credit him? They didn't credit him with a block, but he definitely blocked a three-point shot in this game. He closed out on one of the Clippers shooting from above the break. That person did a sidestep, and they missed their three, but it was such a far, like, I think it was like so far short. I'm pretty sure Julian got a hand on it after, like, he was able to recover after the initial closeout and block that shot. And he's, again, 6'7" with, I believe, a 7-foot wingspan at least.
Mhm.
So, I mean, just use those tools.
Yeah, and then there was another play we were talking about where he was just maybe out of position. Like him and Hunter kind of seemed like they were guarding the same person or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
miscommunication. Both of them had plays where they were kind of in the wrong spot.
Okay.
Either overhelping or something, and then they had to close out it was the same corner on the left corner. Guy was wide open, they're closing out, and on Julian's, he wasn't like close to getting to the shot. He was open and took it. And then on Hunter, he was just closing out really late. He was at one pass away. It was one pass away closing out, and then he got easily driven by. So we can start talking about Pickett and Hunter Tyson if you want to, or where did you want to go with the defense?
If I want to. Do I want to? So, okay, let's talk about Hunter first, because the defense is my main issue with him. I think both are not great defensively. We're not great defensively in this game, and I think Hunter had some real deficiencies that concerned me, because they were exactly the same things that we saw in last summer league, where he doesn't have the best lateral quickness, and especially when he's closing out, he's just giving up blow by after blow by. And you were the one that pointed out him just kind of being out of position that made that even worse.
Yeah.
So when he's kind of sometimes like ball watching some or whatever, he's like slightly out of position, or the defender is able to like drift and just get past him. So when they get the ball, they're able to attack very quickly. And it was almost a guaranteed layup whenever Hunter's defender got the ball in a closeout situation. that was really tough because again, it was the same stuff we saw last summer. We didn't I don't think I saw any improvements. And in fact, I think he looked worse than in any single defensively in any single summer league game that I remember from last summer. So that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, he said after the game that he didn't think it was his best game. I don't know how he phrased it exactly, but he was saying like I could do everything better. It wasn't that great of a game for me. He hit it. I don't remember how many points he had or
He
what,
had
but he hit.
15 points.
Okay.
He was 2 of 6 from 3, not amazing, not
Okay.
terrible. 4 of 10 from the field. Definitely didn't look as comfortable out there as I expected him to, given how comfortable he looked basically from jump in Summer League last year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fouling happening. We had a tiny summer league
Mm,
team, and I didn't love the defensive scheme given the personnel, but I understand they were trying to evaluate the individual defenders and in these different situations. And I think in terms of the defense, Hunter gets an F for this game, and so does Pickett.
yeah. Both of them were. Pickett was -18 and Tyson was -22
Yeah,
on the game in a what was it, 10-point loss.
it was tough. And, we were giving up rebound after rebound. But, I mean, before we move on to the centers, which are more, or the front court, I guess, which are more responsible for those rebounding responsibilities, we got to talk about Jalen Pickett. And, well, why don't you tell us what you saw when you looked at the highlights for this
Yeah.
game?
I was like looking at the highlights, and before I went to like the full game highlights or looked at the defensive highlights and seeing how the Clippers were scoring and how we looked on defense, it's mostly like Nuggets offensive plays that were
Yeah.
good. There was like no Jalen Pickett in that package, I would say almost. There was one
Was it
like
like a
kind of
pass?
finish
Oh, yeah, the one
inside that
layup.
he
Yeah.
kind of like put up and in that was cool. But yeah, just a lot of absence from Jalen Pickett.
I felt really bad for Jalen Pickett in this game. There are two parts to this because one, I think that it seemed clear that the directive from the team was for him to get on ball reps for Julian and for Trey
Mm,
Alexander, who we'll talk about in a bit, as often as possible. So a lot of the time, he's initiating the offense, especially in like a rebound and go situation. He's like looking for Julian, looking for Trey, and giving the ball up to one of those guys and letting them run the offense, which didn't look amazing because neither of those guys are really point guards, but it was clear the team wanted them to get those reps and for them to be able to evaluate how they look in that context. Whenever Jalen was running the offense, it just looked really, really, he just looked really limited. He wasn't able to create separation from his own defender. He wasn't able to get close enough to basically the side of the court where they're trying to score in order to pass effectively and initiate their sets. He's clearly not like a scorer.
yeah.
His shot form is like whatever, but he's also just missing a lot now and want to start to see some of that, especially as off ball as he was in this game. His catch and shoot opportunities were important and he wasn't really able to capitalize on them. And again, when he's not able to establish separation from defenders, when he's on ball trying to score either in the paint or mid range, whatever, when it comes to the step back or trying to go for like a floater, it was just like really tough where I was like, I never felt like the ball was going to go in whenever he was taking a shot.
Yeah. It is weird because these teams aren't constructed with like the principles of roster construction you're used to. It's a summer
Right.
league team. You're trying to get your guys in there and get them some experience.
Right.
Like you said, he's coming in trying to pass to Julian or whoever. It's hard to sometimes separate the individual from like the team when some of these
Right.
things are awkward.
Yeah.
But I feel like it might be fair to like say
Blame the
of
point guard for the way the offense looks.
yeah.
Yeah. And like, look, one thing is, my problem isn't his process either.
Yeah, because sometimes he shows like signs of like, yeah, he has vision. Like I feel
Sure,
like he can know the game.
I just
but
don't. I'm really concerned that he just doesn't have the athletic tools necessary in order to like
yeah,
realize that on an NBA floor, because he's not able to do it in summer league,
right.
right? And it's not like the Clippers had any like particularly good defenders. They were just like kind of pesky and like athletic guys. They were just
Yeah,
dudes.
like you were saying, like on the Nuggets defensive end, they were getting kind of like bullied and pushed around. And
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Everyone was getting bullied and pushed
yeah,
around by the Clippers. They had all these slashers. I'm like, man, our team could really use a slasher. But yeah, that's how I feel about Jalen Pickett right now, which is just not good, which
Yeah.
doesn't bode well for the ball handler situation.
I was just hoping that one of Pickett or Tyson would look like competent because those are like the two spots that we gave that's kind of frustrating all fans. It does not look like great decision making from
Yeah.
Calvin Booth, and you just hope one of them looks like something that we can spin this into a positive. I never thought Jalen Pickett was a realistic option coming into this season to be like some kind of backup point guard. And we still haven't had any news on Russ or who we're getting to be a potential backup.
It feels like the Nuggets, the Summer League Nuggets, we're just all like trudging through Nug life right now. We're all in the groups of death.
Well, I guess we will spin. There's one positive that Jokic was amazing in his Olympic game, which we're going to do later. But that was like, I was kind of on the high of that amazing
Yeah,
performance.
that game happened. This was on Friday. And
Yeah.
then Friday night was the Summer League game. And we had the game, we got the loss, we got the news about DaRon. And it was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what a whirlwind. Like,
Everyone
can we
was
just
like-
have one good day?
Everyone was joking, like, Dynasty's back. You know, like, Jokic is
Yeah.
a god.
It
And then
might
was
still
like-
be back. But
It might
we
still be
need
back.
we need some ball handling. on this
Yeah, I was
team for
joking. The
sure.
project part might be on
Right.
hold.
But let's just like quickly touch on PJ Hall. He was not Mo Wagner, contrary to what I suggested. He could be on DNVR. I don't know how he's going to look the rest of Summer League, but he did not look great in this game. He definitely struggled in the ways that one would predict going to the next level, which is, you know, he doesn't have the same size advantages that he did at the college level. So when he was facing bigger, more athletic guys, it was tough for him to sort of establish that, like, assert that dominance. We saw him make a couple of like big plays, especially toward the end of the game, grabbing some important offensive rebounds, that sort of thing. But he didn't grab a single defensive rebound all night. Not good for your starting center in Summer League. And yeah, it was just like Mo Wagner would never. So I'm sure that PJ Hall is going to want to bounce back from this game. And I'm going to want him to, because I want at least our G League team, since he's going to be on a two-way contract, to have a decent center. We're going to see what happens with that.
Who knew decent centers are like truly the
Really tough
unicorns?
to find. Oh my gosh, that's why centers got so paid this summer.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the other bright spot of Summer League, in my opinion,
Yeah.
Trey Alexander.
Yes. He was pretty awesome. He had a little mid-range pull-up. He had just like a quick release on the three that I didn't think he would shoot, and he just did, and
Pull-ups.
it went in.
Catch and shoot. He actually, in my opinion, he had the most like undefined role in the entire team when you think about it. Because there were other guys coming off the bench whose names I don't know. And they're just
Yeah.
there like playing for an NBA contract. They don't even know if they're playing to try to get on the Nuggets, because there's scouts from other teams like at all of these Summer League games. And they're just there like trying to do whatever they can
Yeah.
to. And so besides those guys, Trey had, I think, the least defined role. And he, in my opinion, looked like the most comfortable guy on the floor, particularly offensively, because he comes from Creighton, the system that is, they play a lot more sort of like random read and react basketball, giving up the ball quickly if you don't have anything, and then getting it back after you think that you're able to create an advantage and that sort of thing. And the offense was in chaos for most of this game, like we've alluded to or said forcefully. But Trey looked calm.
Yeah.
And he never looked like rushed. There was one like crazy pass that I thought was like, what did he just do? When they grabbed, I think he forced a turnover, or the team did, and the ball gets deflected to him. And he just like heaves it forward. And it's all like right on target for Hunter running down the court to get the dunk. And I thought that pass was crazy until I saw that it was on target, because he had a defender like right in his face trying to like stop him from advancing the ball like that. I was I was like excited about Trey going into Summer League, but I was like really impressed with what I saw. He had, in 25 minutes, he had 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists to 1 turnover. So he was just productive. He was just doing stuff. He had a steal, like I said, as well. He had some like bully ball moments too, like where he just like initiated some contact and just like buried this guy under the rim to get a layup. And I don't think I have to look up which Clipper it was. they're not small. Like all of the Clippers guys
Yeah.
were pretty athletic.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see. Trey also did get bullied a little bit on defense too. He's the smallest guy on our team. He's like 6'3", 190 pounds, at least at the combine. And he actually started off the game pretty slow. Like I was pretty concerned how uncomfortable he looked like in the first quarter. But as soon as like the second quarter started, because he's coming on this like bench stint, like he just looked really comfortable and started with that pull-up three in transition.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
I
okay.
know.
Are we cooking? Or
we were.
is CT Fazio cooking?
Yeah, shout out to CT. 'Cause
Oh my gosh.
We were joking about how early he was on Trey Alexander. So when we got him and he was talking about how good he actually was, it was not a fluke because he was really on top of it early in the season. I just loved seeing how versatile he was doing different things on offense.
Yeah.
Just like a mid-range or a pull-up or a transition and he looked pretty like composed, I would say, for Summer League, because we even joked about how frantic the game can look for Summer League, and people are all trying to make a play and like make a statement and like, you know, pretty like erratic on like their closeouts or trying to do a blow by contest. You know, they're kind of jittery.
Yeah, on both ends of the floor, the whole game is very erratic.
And he just like looked like a hooper. He just like looked
he looked like a hooper.
He just looked like he just belonged out there. He just belongs on a basketball court. Like, I don't know. It's really exciting, and it's like I'm trying not to overreact.
I know.
It wasn't like it was a 30-point game with like high usage.
But he had like low usage, and he made the most of what he had.
Exactly.
Right? So
coming
that
off
was
the bench,
very encouraging. I thought Trey just made the most of this opportunity, and I'm excited to see what he looks like moving forward in Summer League because, you know, he's on a 2-way contract right now, but the Nuggets have the option of possibly converting that to a standard deal depending on the situation with our roster spots as the season progresses or as the off season progresses. I think that he was our second best player in this game, particularly offensively.
And to your point about like the Creighton offense and the you know the randomness and not running enough sets, it is like kind of perfect for Summer League in a way where it's like you're pretty disorganized and you just gotta like kind of create something.
Like
and
you almost wonder if he was in a more organized offense, like would that actually like hinder him? I don't know.
Yeah,
but we heard a lot of good things about Trey coming from Malone in particular in the Summer League practice media last week. And so we know Malone is at least intrigued by Trey. So I'm sure I think that he was probably pretty happy with what he saw in this last game. Trey actually closed this game. He did come off the bench, but he closed this game because DaRon went out with the injury. I'm curious to see if that's a lineup that they start with next time, or, you know, does Trey still come off the bench and they kind of try to fit in by positions, and then maybe when Julian gets shut down for the rest of Summer League, Trey enters the starting lineup.
Yeah.
I just want to see more from him. I'm curious.
I think I'm the most excited about him probably besides Strawther, just because it's Strawther and whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
But in the meantime, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell, like Will said, anything to make sure our videos make it to your feeds. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies. Tell them to hit the like button and not the dislike button. Yes. All of those things. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Amazon Music, anywhere you get your podcasts. And hang out with Will is fun too.
Yeah, in person episode.
To my surprise.
Who knows the next time we'll be in person, but, you know.
Yeah.
You never know.
We don't know.
But honestly, it's easier almost doing whatever. They don't need to know the background.
They don't need to know all the words we're allowed to do to set this up.
Yes.
Yeah, but I really appreciate it.
But it was awesome.
And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.